Should be there now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
I got the mic on, right? Yeah, looks like it.
Yep.
Okay, I hear me.
Yep, you're good to go.
There we are. You're showing up. Yep. Facing the sadness.
Facing the sadness. Sorry for the slow start to you in the internet land. We were warned there's some hacking going on out there, and they suggested that we only try to start up one time, and so that's what we're trying to do. And everything's good so far as we know. Doing the best we can with what we got. So, welcome to all you in internet land and to you that are here with us. Thanks. You know, you don't have to tune in. You don't have to be here, but I'm glad that you do, because I enjoy trying to share things with people that want to learn and grow. And my desire is that not to try to make you think like I think, but to help you to think. And the reason why, basically, I ask questions all the time. And when we go through the lesson, one of my main questions is, you know, what does this mean, or what is it that you think? Have you ever noticed that? And that's because questions kind of engage us, whether someone asks them to us or we ask them to ourselves. And I was listening to some information from Richard Feynman, which is a physicist, which has passed away now. But he had, and I don't know what the exact questions are yet, I'm going to try to find out, but he had a certain block of questions that he would ask himself to help him search out the meaning of the questions that he was pondering at the time. And so he felt like that helped him. And probably some of you here have heard of Richard Feynman, but he's famous, and or at least I think he's famous, and I think he was won the Nobel Prize of something, but I don't remember what. So anyway, so let's get started here, and I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
And the topic for today that I guess Lori picked, right? Lori picked this?
I
Yes.
picked it.
You picked it?
Yeah.
All right, okay, then
Lori picked it.
we'll save that question to you since Lori's not here tonight. So,
Oh, what question?
yeah, the question I'll
You
ask later
Okay.
is why did you pick that? You know,
Okay.
I'll ask that later.
I'll answer later.
And so you know, sometimes that's kind of interesting to hear why a person does that. You know, now Tommy, he just did it because I hadn't taught that lesson before, so let's do that one. So well, that's a reason, right? So anyway, so today it's facing sadness. You know, and the more I thought and meditated and prayed about this topic, you know, it's really a powerful and painful topic. It can be very, very beneficial if we'll face our sadness, because it's very destructive if we deny it or run from our sadness. It can be very helpful. Does anybody have any thoughts on that before we go any further about facing sadness?
There's power in it.
Power in it, absolutely. And that kind of lines up with one of the kind of thoughts or questions I was going to ask. Does having some sadness, is that a sign of weakness? That's a question. Having some sign of sadness, is that a weakness? Yes, sir.
No, because
it really takes courage
Good.
to face your sadness, but it's a sign that you want to replace that sadness with something good.
Mm-hmm. Good, very good. Anybody else have anything to say on that before I follow up on the question? No one?
I like his answer.
Yes, a good answer. So, what, Robert, I want to direct this to you since you answered so good there. How about that?
Okay.
That, and of course you don't have to answer, but I think you probably will. But, so if that is a sign of strength facing our sadness, why, what, it's actually a what question. What do most people do when they feel sad?
They run from it. They don't like that feeling, so
Right,
they want to
good.
replace sadness with something that makes them feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And an addictive person
Mm-hmm.
usually runs to their addiction.
Yes, there you go. Yes. They numb out or try to cope with it, and there are some healthy coping mechanisms, but there's probably a lot more unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? And in fact, the goal is that we learn and grow to the place where we don't have to cope, learn how to cope with these things. We're able to deal with them and manage them in our life instead of trying to cope with them, which is a form of trying to manage them a little bit to try to get by them. I would say. Would you say that?
Yes.
Yeah. That was a real little nod there, but it was a nod.
I'm just deep in thought about anger
Okay.
and sadness. So,
Yeah. Good. I'm glad you're in deep thought. So let's go ahead and ask the questions here. What does facing sadness mean? What's sadness? Let's just start off with sadness. I don't have the definition on our sheet, but what's sadness?
I'm looking.
Yes, Robert.
It's hurt or pain.
Now, wait a
Many
second, wait a
times
minute.
we
What
don't
kind
really-
what kind of pain? Let's identify the pain. What kind of pain? It's hurt or pain. What is that?
Emotional pain.
Emotional, very good.
Yeah. And a lot of times, especially in the beginning, before we're ready to face that sadness, we don't know where it comes from.
Yes.
So part of the facing the sadness is identifying where that sadness
Good,
comes
good.
from.
So then, sadness could be a signal that we need to pay attention to. What do you think about that?
Absolutely.
Just like anger or, and if we can't identify the emotion, which we're talking about emotions here, but if we could just identify the pain, I'm feeling this, what am I feeling? I remember in my early days being taught that emotions come in a cluster, a grouping, and it's in my best interest to figure out which emotion that I'm experiencing at the time. And that sounds easy, but it wasn't so easy. And sometimes it's not so easy now.
So that makes me want to mention what my thought process is too, because
Okay.
somebody might actually benefit from it who's listening online. But
All right.
I grew up in a very suck up your tears or else I'll give you something real to cry about. And it was, and my sadness whenever I was younger was always met with anger. So what I learned was don't be sad, be angry. And so up until I was able to identify the real emotion, all of my sadness came out as rage. And it just compounded over time until I was working with Lisa, who used to come here, and she would help me identify emotions. And I'm like, oh my God, to uncluster those emotions and to actually identify it, reduce the power that the rage and the anger had over my life, because it wasn't actually rage and anger. I was actually very sad or
There you go.
disappointed or you know, name it. It was always something else. It was never actually like anger and rage. It was self-protection, self-preservation. Yeah.
Because sometimes we have one emotion, but we try to cover it up with another emotion, like anger. Hey, Willie, would you mind turn the fan on auto instead of on? That way we don't have to do that all the time. And speaking about that, remember the young lady that used to come and speak quite often, and she was she always liked to say interesting things like the kind of refer to God like the Wizard of Oz. Amanda.
I remember her.
Yeah. I heard she passed away.
No,
I don't know anything about it, but I couldn't even remember her name.
it's Amanda.
Hmm.
That's cool.
I knew she had a child and was doing really well the last time I heard something. But when you brought that up, I was thinking about her. I've been searching for her name, so thank you for that. All right, so you were going to read us a definition off of the internet on sadness? I saw you looking it up.
Sadness is a fundamental human emotion characterized by feelings of disadvantage, loss, despair, grief, and helplessness. It is a temporary, normal reaction to difficult times, disappointment, or loss, often accompanied by crying, withdrawal, or low energy.
Good. Thank you.
It says it's not typically a mental illness.
Okay, good. Not typically a mental illness. Okay, good. So I wonder what that means, not typically a mental illness. What do you think that means?
More often than not. Less often, I mean. Less often.
Okay, yes. And what do you think? What does that mean?
It means it might be tossed around as a mental illness a little too much somewhere, possibly.
Yeah.
And maybe you recognize you're misidentified.
So what do you think that means that it is then? I guess maybe I ought to.
That's an emotion.
It's an emotion. And sometimes people think that emotions are bad. Is that true?
No.
Yes, sir?
I don't think so, because well, according to my ex-wife, I didn't show a lot of emotion. She didn't think I had emotions.
Yes.
So I've been trying to get in touch with my emotional self more. And like we mentioned before, you know, the emotions are there. And when we understand the emotions, we can find what causes them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're good emotions, then we should be willing to step into those things that cause the good emotions. If they're bad emotions or cause hurt or pain in our life, then it's a warning sign for us. And if we're aware of that, then we can do something about that, what causes those emotions as well. Or we should try.
So then would you say that emotions are neither good nor bad, that they are an indicator of what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay. How's that sound?
It's perfect.
But oftentimes we think of them as good emotions and bad emotions. But there's something, you know, a stop sign or a red stop light. Some people are always angry at those, but they're just trying to fulfill their function, right?
Yeah.
Keep people safe and orderly. So I'm thinking God gave us emotions, right? Just like I was totally surprised I'm gonna deviate here for a second. I was totally surprised many years ago when I was studying about divorce recovery. I was teaching a class or classes on divorce recovery, and I was listening to a fella video of him. Of course, this was I was watching on VHS, so this was good long time ago. And he was talking about depression, how depression wasn't a sin, it was a signal, and that is, and to abbreviate here, it was there, that depression was there to help us to recover some emotional trauma that you were going through, and that we should not fight it, but we should allow it to help us process through our emotion or the trauma, which was really enlightening to me, because up to this time I felt it was bad. It was kind of like it was a sin. There was something wrong with me, and for feeling that way. And then so all you can do when that's how you feel, then you go into coping mechanisms to try to avoid that feeling or deny that feeling. Does that make sense? And so when I learned that it's part of the healing process, now you can get stuck in anything, right? I'm not denying people get into being stuck or into a chronic depression. You know, and then there's other depressions too, but when I no longer beat up on myself for what was going on there, and then do exactly what you were talking about a while ago, about looking at trying to find out the why I was there and allow it to process and get better or to heal, I think I got better. In fact, I don't get into those places where I used to get. Now I have some times, and they're in no way, shape, or form as long or as deep as they used to be. So I know I deviated a little bit. So, all right, let's get back on the question. What does facing? Do we need to talk about what facing is? We're talking about facing.
Accepting.
Huh?
Accepting.
Dealing,
Looking at it,
embracing it maybe, facing. So what does facing sadness mean? Yes, sir. Tommy's gonna give us all the information we ever wanted to know.
Means choosing to honestly acknowledge and experience your pain.
Wait a minute. What's that second word?
To honestly acknowledge.
Honestly? What? Why would we have to put that in there? Why would we have to add honesty when we're talking about ourselves?
Well, my first thought is there's different levels to the honesty.
Yeah.
Just like what I was talking about earlier, I honestly would have said, no, I'm enraged or angry. So, but then those layers coming off after identifying the emotions got more honest and honest and honest until it was the actual truth.
So why are we dishonest with ourselves?
For me, I didn't know different yet. Maybe, and there were some, okay, so I was sitting here thinking about some of whenever I was a younger mom, being dishonest with myself, I could be I could just blink it over and be yes, I did the best I could, it's whatever. Instead of facing the shame and the sadness that I felt by not being the mom that I wanted to be in those moments, getting honest, maybe it's not so much sadness I was feeling as it was shame. Well, that needs to be honest, because the shame doesn't belong. The sadness is okay, but it happened, I can't change it. I can still be sad about those moments where I still desire to be a better mom, but I've got to move past it and understand that was 18-year-old me or 19-year-old me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 40 now.
Mm-hmm.
The big difference between who I was and who I am. So.
And we're not here to put blame or condemnation or guilt or shame on anyone. We're just trying to help us to get a hold on this messy life, and and uh, and uh, you know, fact of it is, uh, a lot of this stuff we do to ourselves, but we don't even know why we do it. We don't know. We just, we have all these different forces pushing us, and we have this information that is very destructive, but since it may be the only information that we have coming to us, so we then think that it may be true. But the real sad part here, and I think this is true, that the truth is in us all, but oftentimes we can't even recognize it until we get to those quiet times or open times or those honest times that we're able to listen to it. And again, that's not to put blame or guilt on anyone, because we've all been there.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've all been there. Okay, I interrupt you twice, Tommy, so you can go ahead and read that definition again.
Means choosing to honestly acknowledge and experience your pain instead of avoiding, numbing, or running from it.
Yes.
It sounds simple, but it's actually one of the most courageous things a person can do.
Wow. Yes. What do you think that means? The most courageous thing that a person can do?
Well, it's facing something head on and overcoming it.
Yes.
Having an achievement in your life, like
Well,
you face the sadness. You looked at it and you worked through it. It takes a lot of courage.
In some of the mythology information where it kind of relates these big things in our life to like giants or monsters or dragons, and it takes something to stand up and face what we're talking about, face these things in our life.
Yeah.
And I remember a day that I had been struggling with some stuff, probably up to most of my life, up to that point, and I saw in my mind's eye that it was like a big old shadow from a big monster, and I didn't look at the monster because I was afraid to look at the monster. I didn't want to deal with that monster, but I could see the shadow of the monster. It was at my back, and it was going this way, and it was huge. It was enormous. And I was tired. I needed to confront it, but there's no way that I could deal with that monster. I believed that I couldn't. You know what I mean? I believed that I couldn't. And something inside of me, and I think it was the Holy Spirit, that said I needed just to turn around and look at my monster. And I remember, this is really weird because I was sitting in my driveway, and I saw myself get around behind my car and the monster was on the other side at the front of my car, and I was at the back of my car, and I kind of looked around the edge of my car to see it. Now this is all, I'm figuratively speaking, and I realized the monster was nowhere as large as I had built it up in my mind. It was big. It would be tough, but it wasn't gigantic. And that was the day that I started to deal with confronting my monster. And it's piece by piece.
Yep.
And so, anyway, hopefully you can relate to that story a little bit. So, facing sadness. So, facing sadness is saying that this hurts. I'm willing to look at it. I remember reading that, but I didn't tie that to my story that I just told right then, because I didn't think about that story until just something that Vanessa said. Uh, I'm willing to look at it, feel it, because I felt it, okay? And I felt weak. Not that I was weak, but I felt weak. And understand it. I don't remember thinking that I was going to understand it. I just needed to deal with it, and I didn't know how. But things kind of went in motion. I'm thinking right now, things kind of started moving in a particular emotion. And I remember my old professor from when I was going to college in Pittsburgh had talked to me about something, and I thought, well, there's maybe. And so anyway, it involves three different movements. It's awareness. We have to become aware, number one. Number two is acceptance, like you talked about a while ago. So we have to become aware. Just because you become aware don't mean you accept it, okay? So we have to accept it, and then we have engagement. Then we do something about it. We lean into it. If all we can do is lean forward, then we just lean into it, okay? We don't jump off the cliff at it when we first start out, okay? Because, I mean, some people do, and usually, not always, but usually they end up getting in my opinion, that I've seen in worse situations because they tried to force something when they needed to work on something. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's jump into tying together. Well, I'm going to read this last statement down here on answering the question is what does facing sadness mean? The last statement on the page pertaining to that, and it says a simple way of saying it. Facing the sadness is allowing yourself to feel the truth and your pain so God can begin to heal it. So, and that's what we're talking about. God supernaturally healing us. If we get honest, we humble, and we recognize it. We do these 3 steps here I talked about. Become aware. We accept, and we engage, and then we're open up to it. And there's other information on here that I've circled and highlighted, but I'm not gonna be able to go into it. So anyway, it's there. The sheet, if you don't have it, the sheet's back there, and it is 3 pages I got today because, according to Robert, I got carried away. So, which is right. So let's. How does step 4 tie into our topic? And I'm just gonna, step 4 reveals the story. Okay. We go into the inventory and we start trying to dig it out. Okay, that's I think has to do with awareness. We get aware, and it helps us to get into acceptance, and then it will help us to go on and engage. So step 1 reveals the story to us, and facing the sadness, which is our topic, besides step 4, is reveals the wounds. What has happened to us? Where these things have happened, these situations that we were in or things that we had done. And yes, it probably wounded other people that also wounds us, but we're wounded by what we've done also. And we're also I think in most of us, and we even feel the wounds that we caused others to have. And we and as our talk, when we go into Nehemiah in a little bit, that they're talking about having remorse and they bemoan their that they have drifted so far away from the truth, and they weren't aware. You know, that's kind of what we were talking about a while ago, Vanessa. They weren't fully aware of it, but when they heard it, it went deeply in them. They felt it, and so that's when they had this great sorrow. That's what we're talking about here, is facing the sorrow. And we'll talk about this, and matter of fact, I got quite a bit of information on the very end of that fact sheet, on the third page, that about this question, that the statement is that, yes, we recognize our mistake, we're sad about that, that has softened our heart. Now we need to rejoice because we recognized our wrong, and we need to celebrate because we're in a better shape now. This is my translation or interpretation. We're in better shape now because we recognize our wrong, and now our heart's been softened, and we need to know that our relationship with God is in a better place. We're not perfect, okay, right? You know, we're not looking for perfection, we're looking for progress. So, questions, comments? All right. And do we have somebody who's gonna read the steps today?
Yeah. Little old me.
All right, thank you, Robert.
Step 1, we admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And back to number 4, we're on today. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves.
Thank you, Robert.
Good evening, everyone. How you doing?
Good.
Facing the sadness. Bible reading, Nehemiah 8, 7 through 10. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Most of us falter at the prospect of making an honest, more personal inventory.
Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
Yeah, I agree 100% on that because we really don't want to know where we really messed up. That's just human nature. we wanna believe that we've done right and we're doing right, and we don't want, we just don't wanna dig in there and say, yes, this is where I messed up, as a human being.
Okay, go ahead.
Rationalization and excuses for avoiding this step abound, excuse me.
What does that statement mean, and why?
Statement means that we're gonna make any excuse and, tell ourselves, hey, I'm right for not doing this. I don't need to do this, cause I done put that behind me. I had to change my word there. I done, wrote that off as a mishap, and it's done past, so we don't need to bring it up anymore. That's what that means to me.
Okay.
The bottom line is that we know there is an enormous amount of sadness awaits us, and we fear the pain that fate oh, pardon me, I'm messing this up. The bottom line is that we know there's an enormous amount of sadness awaiting us, and we fear the pain that facing the sadness will bring.
So what does that mean?
We know that we're gonna, as we dig into it, we know we're gonna get sad, so why disappoint us? Why disappoint myself with doing something that I know is gonna make me sad when there's plenty of stuff I can do that's gonna make me happy? That's, so,
Anybody have any comments on that? Okay. So, why get sad when I can make myself glad?
right,
And how's that work out for us?
just keep digging that hole deeper. That's the only way I can put it. You know, you give me a shovel, I'm gonna go down instead of up when I need a ladder thrown to me.
Okay, I hadn't heard that one before.
Yeah, that's one for me.
Okay.
The Jewish exiles who returned to Jerusalem after captivity in Babylon had lost their touch with God. During the exile,
What is that? Do we know what that means? They were in exile and they were in captivity at Babylon and they lost touch with God. What does that mean?
they didn't think of him. It wasn't on their minds, and they just gradually got away, is what I understand.
I think, if I remember correctly, Jerusalem was destroyed and the people were taken into exile around 607 BCE or something. And they spent like 70 years over there in Babylon. Probably a whole new generation was coming along by then.
I think it was longer than that, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know.
I think it was a couple hundred years, actually. Maybe more than that.
Okay.
But
Anyway.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the whole timetable. But anyway, they were slaves basically, and they probably were worked night and day and beaten and weren't treated very well by their captors. So they were just trying to survive more than anything. And
they were in foreign land.
their wills were broken. They probably lost hope that they would ever see their homeland again. But then somehow Nehemiah found favor with the new king of Babylon, who had overthrown the old Babylonian king. and asked if he could take some people to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. And so then there was suddenly hope. But they went back to and did that. They rebuilt the temple and the walls, and they found some of the old books of the law that they hadn't heard read to them for a lot of years. Probably some of them had never heard it in their lives. But then when they did hear it, they were really overwhelmed and realized that they had strayed so far away from God that they were sad about it.
Yes, and and one of the things we talked about last week was that that most of the people didn't even know how to speak Hebrew, and when they found the scriptures, of course, they were written in Hebrew and language, and they that's the Levites read it. Ezra, I think, was the main Levite, and then they interpreted it and explained it to the people. And I looked and tried to check how many people now, and what they rebuilt the temple and they rebuilt the wall, and then they were having this time, and and it's some said it was thousands of people. And I looked at the accounting in there, and it looked like closer to 30 or 40,000 people that were there, and and of course, then last week we talked about that there were foreigners there also, and they separated from the foreigners. So there was a big crowd there, and there was things going on, and it was not only people from Babylon, as I recall, that came to help. There was people from Jews from other places came to help to restore the temple, and this king helped in doing that, and then also those people that came from these other places also helped finance it too, and so. So now, if they couldn't speak the language, they surely lost touch with God, because they couldn't read the word. And I don't know back then if they actually had if they translated into Arabic languages at that time. So any other thoughts?
I'm sitting here thinking about how, so whenever Babylon first attacked Judah, because it was the tribe of Judah that he defeated to get them into captivity, just like how that generational trauma, because you can't even blame it on your ancestors, because when after they left Egypt and they were in the desert for 40 years, the whole first generation had passed away before they got their promised land. How long they were in the promised land, I don't know, before they got, into captivity with Babylon, but just how the trauma of having that war around, so you take away, the parents' ability during the war to teach their children proper Hebrew, and how it was like a slow separation of family in that time, to where by the time the children were old enough to fight back, they were so wore out and probably so far separated because of the trauma and the war that had been going on that led them into captivity. They finally just they wore them out enough to where now their hearts are Babylonian instead of Judean.
Well, I don't know that they took everyone in slaves, but we know they took some, and they know they took the brightest minds and used them in their leadership. If you remember Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and all of those. So there's there's a lot in that, but our main point here today is that they had gone through this and they were really excited about being able to do this, and then they find out, because they discover the word, that they've messed up in their life, and their parents. Remember last week we talked about they repented for even their parents, their ancestors, not just their parents, but their ancestors. And so, because we do have this trickle down effect that affects all of us, you know, and so, but we have to face the sadness so that we can deal with the sadness. That's what we're talking about today. Anything else? Go ahead, Willie.
During the exile, they haven't been taught his laws, so naturally they haven't been practicing them either. After rebuilding the city wall and the temple, the priests gathered the people together to read the book of laws. The people were overwhelmed with grief and began weeping because their lives in no way measured up.
So tell us what you think that means.
Well, once they realized what the law was, after trying to build back what they lost, they realized that, okay, hey, we never done none of this. We don't know how to even start, you know. So naturally they were overwhelmed because they thought they were going to be condemned again because they wasn't doing it.
And so you know, they were excited about to be there because they went there. I mean, there was effort put out and probably expense put out and labor put out. They interrupted their lives, and so we had all this going on, and so they were excited, and then they found out that they were messed up. You know, do you remember the time when you figured it was revealed to you that you made a mistake and you really somehow didn't know it, but you did, and it's hard to take, right? It's hard to take, isn't it? And so now they kind of moved. They went kind of from being excited to being overwhelmed. Does that pretty much tell the story?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The priest said to the people,
Now we're talking about Nehemiah 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah. Don't mourn or weep on such a day as this, for today is a sacred day before the Lord your God. Go and celebrate with a feast of rich foods and sweet drinks, and share the gifts of food with people who have nothing prepared. Don't be dejected and sad, for the joy of the Lord is your strength.
Any thoughts?
Well, it's pretty plain and simple in the way he laid that out there. If you wanna, you know, don't dwell on what you did wrong, but go and be rejoiceful that, hey, I am saved by it. You know, I don't have to condemn myself because I've already said I was sorry and moving on.
On the last part of our information sheet that I made up, I proposed the question. Let me get to the question which is basically the scripture there. I said, what does this statement mean out of Nehemiah 8 and 9, verse 9? Don't mourn and weep on such a day as this, for today is a sacred day before the Lord your God. And so I have some information on that. We're not going to go through it all, but it's there if you want to look at it. But it's God one of the statements that I've got on here, it says God meets their awareness of sin. They're aware of the sin. God meets their awareness of sin with the opportunity for joy and restoration. So God wants. He's not, it's in here. I don't know where it is right yet, but God. It's hard for us to grasp this next statement, but God is not there to punish us. He's there to help us, to give us His grace, to restore us, to redeem us. Okay, and so that's He wants to bring us into a better relationship with Him. Conviction says this is what was wrong. Okay, they were convicted. It's wrong. But grace says, now let's make it right together. Let's move in the right direction together. And that's what they were trying to convince. This is, yes, you're sad, your heart is softened. Okay, now let's rejoice in the Lord and celebrate that we're in a better position than we were. We don't have to beat ourselves up. We just need to go forward. And I got quite a bit of information there that you can look at if you so desire. So Willie, what did you learn from this lesson?
We still got more to go. You're trying to cut me off short, but I'm good with that.
What, did I cut you off short?
Yeah, we just got done with the verse.
Oh, I'm
We're
sorry.
still got to talk about the festival of shelters.
Yeah, all right, Festival of Shelters.
All right.
Excuse me.
That's
Thank
what
you.
I learned about this. So
Thank-
you don't have to answer that again.
Okay. Thank you for straightening me out.
The next day marked the beginning of the festival of shelters.
And I have information on that same sheet about festivals of shelters. Go ahead.
A required Jewish feast celebrating the Israelites' escape from bondage in Egypt and God's care for them while they wandered in the wilderness.
I think it's important to point out that while they were wandering in the wilderness, God cared for them. I wonder, this is a question. Are you up to the question?
Yeah.
Maybe should I ask just in general, or should I be specific to? Now let's ask in general. I wonder when you or we were wandering through our wilderness, if God was caring for us.
Yes.
Yes?
And we just didn't see it. Or in my case, I didn't see it.
Yeah. That's a big thing. That's some really good awareness. So let's ask the next question. If He didn't care for us when we were in our wilderness, what would have happened to us?
We'd still be there. We'd still be going
Or
dead.
in jail. Right? Isn't that the truth?
Yep.
And sometimes we're so hard-hearted, we do end up in jail, right, or in other places, and He hasn't left us or He never left us or forsook us in those situations. He was there still, reaching out, not to punish, but to heal. Okay, go ahead, Willie.
When we set out to face the pain and sadness of making a moral inventory, we will need the joy of the Lord to give us strength. The joy comes from recognizing and even celebrating God's ability to bring us out of bondage and care for us as we pass through the sadness towards the new way of life.
Do you agree with that statement or disagree?
Well, I agree, because without him, more than likely, I would not have been here today with some of the stuff that I have pulled, some of the stuff that I have done. And when I make my inventory list every year, there's still stuff on it from day one that I haven't got to yet. That don't mean that I'm blocking it out, but it just means I got other stuff that he's dealing with me on right now.
So let's ask that question I asked a while ago, and maybe we have a different answer.
What did I learn?
Yeah, from this lesson.
Facing the sadness takes real strength that we don't have on our own. It has to be given to us from God. God has to give us that strength, and then that's where we find the joy in it. And we don't have to be sad about what we've done. We just push forward, because He's right there pushing with us. And that's the hard one to learn.
And heal. And heal.
And yeah, the healing
And
comes.
some of healing is
That's in the
accepting God's forgiveness, and as we sometimes call it, forgiving ourselves.
And He knows I'm gonna mess up again. I know I'm gonna mess up again. I just hope that I've got enough knowledge that it don't spiral me into messing up more than the once.
Good. So what's your takeaway on this lesson?
The more sadness that I face instead of running from it, the less it's gonna be hurtful on the inside to me. Cause it's like a tree. If you get rid of the vine, this is gonna hurt me because I was told this at more. If you get rid of the tree when it's little, you don't have to deal with the problem when it's big. And sadness is the same thing. If you can deal with the sadness while it's just a little ache, you don't have to deal with the brokenness in the end.
Okay, thank you. And I think we need to make sure that we understand the sadness is just an indicator of something that we need to be address, right? And we deal with that, and then we let it go. Vanessa is going to share with us the reflection and the questions.
Yes.
Yay, Vanessa.
Let me get back there. Okay. Facing the sadness. What painful memories?
Wait a second.
Uh-huh.
We got a person, I just looked at the information coming in,
Mhm.
and Lewis Ware from Texas said that it was 400 years.
400 years
Yeah,
in
in exile.
captivity.
Yeah. Do what?
400 years.
Yeah, 400 years. Yeah. Thank you, Lewis, for
In
that.
captivity was Robert's question?
Well, it was, they were in exile for 400 years.
Oh, okay.
And so, I think this is the first
I
time.
just looked back in the summary of Ezra,
Mhm.
and it said it was 70 years from the time the temple was destroyed to when it was rebuilt. But I'm sure it took a lot more time to arrange to get all the captives back to Israel. So, but from the time it was destroyed until Cyrus made the declaration that they could go back and rebuild the temple, Ezra took several people with him, and it took 20 years to rebuild the temple. So, and then after that, there was a lot more time, there was still a lot of Israelites in captivity, and I'm sure they were making arrangements to eventually get a bunch of the people back to Israel. But anyway, enough on that.
That's right. I was surprised to see Lewis's. I guess it's Lewis and
his wife, Yvonne, so, anyway.
Yeah.
And so,
Anyway,
and to my knowledge, this is the first time he's ever said anything, if he's ever watched it before, so. Thanks, Lois, appreciate that. Hope you're doing well and your family. Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I
It's
thought that
okay.
was interesting.
That's fine.
now why did you choose this?
Yeah, why did you choose, very good. Yeah,
Thanks for reminding him.
why did you choose this topic?
Well, honestly, so for like the last 2 years, I've been facing a lot of this. I talked about like I had been doing a lot of inner childhood wound healing, which brought up a lot of my mother. Now I'm really been dealing with like my mother wounds, you know, which is why I was talking about my kids over there, because bringing this up, a lot of I'll tell just a little backstory. Like, I got married when I got pregnant at 17 and married at 18. I got married because I was pregnant. And then we had 2 more kids together. So all 3 of my kids belonged to my first husband. And so I went from being a daughter to a wife without even getting to know myself as a human woman, you know? And so I struggled a lot with identity. And so there's been an insurmountable amount of sadness that I stuffed down, and or it came out as rage and anger. And a lot of the sadness that I have been dealing with are those moments where I wish I would have been a softer mom. But then I look at my mom, and my mom is a softer woman now, but I love everything about my mother, even though I'm surprised that, you know, I'm alive and she's not in jail. You know, because that's the truth of we had a very volatile relationship growing up, you know, like I was diagnosed at 33 with ADHD, going 33 years undiagnosed, explained a lot of that stuff. So, you know, that's just a brief little summary of some of the stuff that I had been through. There is a lot, too much to go into, but there's a lot of sadness that now at 40 and an empty nester, because all of my children are adults now, that I'm dealing with as I get closer to my mom. Like, we have an amazing relationship now, and I absolutely love her. And I love getting to see her be a softer woman than what she was afforded whenever I was younger. And I get to try to move into that phase earlier than she did now, because I'm getting a good example now, a better example now,
Nice.
to be what kind of woman like that I really desire to be, because I get to watch my mom and I got to watch my grandma. My grandma was always that softer woman, and she was always that, but she was hard when she needed to be, in a very just stern and assertive way, but still gentle. She was, I can't even call her a gentle giant. She was 4'7".
Yes.
So she's a very tiny little,
She was.
strong woman, very strong woman. And so she was always my moral compass, even whenever my mom, in those times, because, you know, her and my dad's relationship wasn't great, so she didn't get to be the soft. She was very much a breadwinner, had to be a lot of the backbone to the family. And so, like, I understand it now, going through the inner childhood healing that I've gone through, getting to find the compassion for my parents that they need, because they were teenagers, or, well, they were 23, mom was 23 when she got pregnant with me, but they were teenagers when they got married, 16 and 18. And so the same mercy and grace that I'm trying to find for myself, I needed to have for my parents, and I needed to find it for my parents first before I could find it for myself. Because I needed to understand. So that's why, to answer your question, I chose Facing the Sadness, because once I started to recognize my rage and my anger really was sadness, like that stuffed down bottled emotion. Because like I said, I grew up in a family that You know, tears were only ever crocodile tears. They weren't real. I'll give you something to cry about, you know, type of generation, which I'm so glad my parents are different now. You know, they don't talk that way to the grandkids. So I get to see them in different phases and different, archetypes, I guess. I can't figure out what the other word is I'm looking for, but roles, personalities, yes. And how different they are from just being mother, daughter, father, and grandpa, and now grandparents. You know, they got their first great grandbaby, which is great. So anyway, that's why I chose this, because it does take a lot of strength and a lot of stuff to be able to face it in the moment, even because some of this I didn't want to bring the sadness on myself, but I knew that there was a lot that needed to be healed, which we'll get into now. So what painful memories keep me from going forward and writing a fourth step inventory? The very first time I ever did the fourth step, because I don't think I struggle with it now as much, but the first time I was still very much in victim mode. I'm the victim. I didn't do anything wrong. Why do I need to write down anything bad about myself? And that came from a very deep place of shame and grief within myself, um, feeling ashamed. You know, going through the identity crisis, feeling ashamed to even, I'm losing my train of thought. Maybe it's not shame. I didn't want to go through the negative. I already hated myself enough, I guess. I hated myself enough. I went through school growing up thinking that everybody else hated me also, you know, so I didn't want to sit and think of anything negative, but whenever it got to the positive parts, too, I couldn't think of anything positive to say about myself. And I actually put a Facebook post saying, I'm doing step 4 personal inventory. Can you guys list 10 things? And that was Zach's idea. Him and Lisa used to come, and that was his idea to ask other people about the positive things. And it blew my mind of that there were actual positive things that other people had to say about me, you know, because growing up in, you know, with my parents, being married kind of begrudgingly to one another, for the sake of us kids, raising us kids, there wasn't a lot of affection, you know, and being undiagnosed ADHD, a lot of the attention I got was negative attention. And so I very much internalized and personalized that. So the painful memories keeping me from going forward whenever I was first doing this was I was still working because I was 26, I believe, whenever I first did this, 25, 26. And no, I was 26. And I was still in the place trying to figure out even what kind of mother I wanted to be. So how dare you ask me to say anything negative about myself or admit anything negative about myself, because I was doing the best I could. And in my mind, I wasn't in the wrong. And I didn't want to face some of those moments. I've had a lot of memories come up from like when my oldest was a baby and I was 18 and working 2 jobs and exhausted and going through postpartum psychosis, actually, and how hard that was, and how I've got to find mercy and grace for that 18-year-old little baby girl me, right? You know, having a brand new baby and a husband, you know, and it was just like 3 months prior or 5 months prior to that, I was still living with my parents. You know, so in 5 months, my life completely flipped upside down. So I got to find mercy and grace to be able to do the steps. So I threw the book the first time I did it. I threw it and I didn't touch it for 4 months. And it took a long time for me to get through this. So those painful memories, you know, they still come back, but they're not as painful now. So I can talk about them and not feel such shame and regret with them. So what have I been afraid of facing? Being a failure. being 40 and not having much to show for it, you know, and what not having much to show for how much hard work I feel like I've done as an adult, but it's all been emotional survival mode hard work, and that is extremely hard work. Especially while you're in survival mode. And but being a failure, and I'm not even gonna say a failure of like having 5 relationships, because the truth is like, yes, I had 5 relationships, but I was strong enough to leave 5 traumatizing relationships, you know. But there are times where I'm just like, I'm 40 and I'm single, like I'm never gonna have that we've been married 50 or 60 years, you know, or the year and a half that I went without my child talking to me. Being a failure as a mom. But I don't feel like I'm a failure as a mom. That's just the fear, is that I have failed. I hate the fact that like I had 10 years where there was no substances and like life was, you know, what it was with my children until I got into a relationship that was like actual physical domestic violence. It wasn't just the emotional or financial abuse, it was, or verbal abuse, which I could hide from my children better than I could the physical abuse. And then that's whenever I relapsed. And so it was that year and a half that I was with him that has kind of, that was so traumatic for my children that I hate that it molded and shaped their life more than the 10 years where it wasn't violent. I hate that. And I see it now with my children, the way that they live, that they're still kind of in survival mode while I'm healing. And then I feel guilty because of the way that they're living, because I see that they are repeating patterns that I really tried hard to keep them from, but I didn't keep them from it completely. So it is what it is. That's what this sign is here for. It is what it is. And but now, you know, I get to what I keep quoting a lot of what my mom says or would say to me, you know, and I'm realizing now too that they have a lot of greatness in them, where like their stubbornness and bullheadedness could actually get them out of volatile situations, just like my stubbornness and bullheadedness got me out of those bad situations. So I can't even say all the negative things about those emotions. Like you're saying, they're not always negative emotions. So those 2 negative emotions saved my life.
Those
You know?
2 emotions.
Those 2 emotions.
You said called them negative. I just was.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was saying negative, like other people might call those
Yeah,
negative emotions.
I understand.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know.
Yeah.
They were those 2 emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. They
And
saved
could
my
it be possible, catch the way I say this,
Mhm.
could it be possible that God gives us those strong bends in our personality because we need them to do what we need to do in our
Yes.
life? But we also then need to allow him to regulate those
Mhm.
strong bends.
Yeah. And I've always said too, growing up, that like my stubbornness was a gift because it keeps me from being pulled outside of who he created me to be.
Good.
Whenever I'm faced with, you know, being tore up about my faith or belief system, I'm not too stubborn to be open to listen to what somebody says, but if somebody's there blatantly trying to pull me away from my beliefs, then the stubbornness is definitely a gift. And yes, I absolutely believe that. Yeah. And to not, you know, just still allow myself to be a victim in those types of relationships. So,
Good. Congratulations.
thank you. What role has shame from my past mistakes played in keeping me from starting and completing an inventory? I feel like I've kind of already answered it.
So what role has shame, and we're talking about shame here,
Mhm.
from your past mistakes played in keeping you from starting to address this inventory? Is there? And you're addressing the inventory nowadays, but in the past it was a different story.
Yeah. Well, I know a big thing. I didn't, for a very long time, I refused to talk about my children to people. I wouldn't talk about them in therapy. I wouldn't talk about them to anybody. And I said that it was because, and in a big way, it was protecting them. I didn't want people to talk bad about my children. I didn't want them to know about my children because I didn't, I have had issues with trusting people. So I didn't want them to get any kind of ideas about my children. And I didn't want, but the biggest thing, like in therapy, bringing a moral inventory, writing any of it down, I didn't want a therapist to point out to me that I was a bad mom, you know. Um, because I don't feel like I was a bad mom, but I've had some very bad moments. So I'm not a bad mom.
That's a good
I had
distinction.
bad moments as a mom.
Which we all have bad moments.
Mm-hmm. That we wish that we could turn back the clock and fix, But the strength in that with my kids now, because I want to highlight that, is Allie, my middle one. She messages me and calls me and she sends me stuff and she's like, I'm so grateful for you as a mom, and this is something that you would do and it'd be something funny. So she's starting to get some of those good memories and addressing some of those good memories because she's doing a lot of healing right now too. My youngest is kind of going through a not wanting to talk to me phase. She's 18, so I kind of understand it. But she still reaches out whenever she needs mom as mom. If she has to go to the doctor or something, or has to take Tylenol. She's terrified of taking Tylenol, so I have to tell her, you'll be fine, you're gonna live, and I'm finally getting to rebuild my relationship with my oldest, and getting to spend time with them has been a lot better. But even making that shift, so I'm talking about like the shifts from being a daughter to mom. Now I'm getting to be like a mother of adult children, and that is a totally different relationship than being a mother of minor children.
Bet.
And now it's like I've got to, like, from the sidelines, watch their lives happen and then just be there for them with a safety net to catch them, And so the shame, I can talk about it now. I can talk about some of this stuff now about my children, with my children, doing the inventory. But I never wanted to open the door to allow anybody to cause me any more shame than what I already felt as a mother, or a wife. Does pride tell me that I don't need an inventory? It absolutely did tell me that I did not need an inventory whenever I first, was doing this. And, there are still some times, like even now, like I have to sit and think, but I don't want to sit and think too hard and long. But I don't want to think that it's pride keeping me from doing an inventory. But there are times where I'm like, well, I don't really feel like that there's necessarily been anything new that has occurred that has made me feel like I need to add anything else, to the moral inventory. Nothing else has come up. Maybe I've reached the center of the onion on those deep things. And I don't know if that's possible, but I'm not saying that I'm perfected either. I just want to make that clear. But I've addressed enough of the past stuff now that I can finally feel free to move forward.
Good.
So,
Can I say something here?
yes.
We don't always have to blast our way into our past and in that inventory. I am a believer that it comes up when we are willing to turn our awareness into that and ask that question And if it doesn't come up, that doesn't mean that you have to get out the pick and go to digging.
Yeah.
And because God will, and I believe this, that God will reveal those things to us when it's time and we're ready. And we don't, I mean, even in natural healing, you can't do too many surgeries in a row too close together. You know, you gotta have healing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And it's kind of like step 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So once we kind of get to that point where we are healing and we are on the road to recovery, then things come up. We're not perfect, but when things come up, we're ready.
Yes, good,
I admit it. Yes, I shouldn't have done that. I'm so
Good.
sorry.
good.
But before, there's no way, you know. I mean, I was hiding. I was wanting to hide everything. Anybody found out, said, "Oh no, you're wrong. You're taking it wrong."
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I remember many years ago, and I'm talking probably 45 plus years ago, this young man told me, he said, when you're accused, deny, deny, deny. And that was a philosophy he was living by.
And then sue, sue, sue.
He sounds like a, what is that, jailhouse lawyer? The lawyer that's in jail. But I was just sitting here thinking about one specific thing that was on an inventory that I didn't want to admit to. It was like 3.5 years ago, I was teaching a class about getting rid of the addictive behaviors. So not just the addiction or the substance, but the behaviors that go along with it. And
Yes.
I was an avid collector of, I love old glass, like smoked glass, green glass, yellow glass, and I collected chalices and wine glasses. And then I also collected shot glasses from where I've been in the United States, or if somebody had been somewhere, they would always bring me a shot glass, even though I didn't drink anymore. I still had all of those. And so I had to really struggle with the inventory of getting rid of those things. Like, why do I still need them? Well, at that point, it really was like, oh, they represented, you know, where I've been, because I had brought back several from Mexico, several from other states and stuff. But I still had to get rid of them because they were a reservation that I had that I could use at any point in time, you know, and that was a painful thing because I like collecting things. I'm a maximalist. So
You're a what?
I'm a maximalist, not a hoarder. I'm a
Oh.
maximalist, I'm a collector. So, yeah.
I'm a minimalist.
Are you? It's hilarious that I am that because I live in a camper and most of everything I own is in storage now. And I haven't needed it for 1.5 years that I've lived in this camper. And yeah, I did finally today hang up some stuff on my walls. So
I have one thing hanging on my wall, a calendar.
nice.
I don't have pictures. I don't like stuff hanging on my wall.
You know, it's funny because I haven't had it for 1.5 years and I hung everything up today and I put up a shelf and I just looked around my room. I'm like, this is a lot. So maybe even I've changed, you know, being forced into minimalism, you know, unknowingly. Like, yeah. Yeah, because like I haven't needed everything that's been in storage, so why keep holding on to it? I should have a yard sale. Have I told myself that others who are in more dire straits than I am are the ones that really need it? I have before, but I think I got out of the habit of that several years ago. I want to say probably close to 6 years. You know, it's not, trauma's not a competition. And that really needs to be clear. Trauma is not a competition. Working in mental health for the 9 years that I did, learning that everybody processes things differently. We could be in a horrifying car wreck, one person come out of it just fine. Another person has, you know, some nightmares here or there, and they might need some medical attention, but they're otherwise relatively okay. And then the other person might never come out of their house again. You know, and so, but it's the same car wreck. And that one person who's just fine might think that the person who's now a hermit in their home is overreacting, but it's the same car wreck. But we all process it differently. Trauma is not a competition, so we can't keep comparing ourselves to other people. You know, have other people had it worse than me? Yeah, sure. You know, but is that any of my business? If they want help from me, I'll, you know, like I'll be there to help them. But I can't compare how I feel and what I've been through to what somebody else has been through and say I'm worse off or you're worse off, you know, because even saying that somebody else is worse off, I think is a little condescending, you know, because now we're focusing on the negative instead of the positive, which is, you know, helping them get up out of the pit too if they're asking for help. So I got out of the habit of that a long time ago. So
So what did you learn from this lesson?
Sadness is just a form of vulnerability that is okay to have. And it is definitely different than depression.
Yeah.
Because I've had depression. Mainly induced by low vitamin D, by the way.
That's why it's called vitamin D.
Yeah.
You know, you know, with that, someone that hadn't heard your story here would think that that was kind of a light statement, but it's not a light statement. It's a very,
What?
that sadness is important, and that you recognize it, and you are even appreciating your sadness, even if you have some still yet have some forms of depression. But you have, I'm saying you have made big healing strides in your life, and you're moving forwards, and we're just still, you know, we're just still taking little steps, but they're important steps.
And facing it too, it will control your life. And this is somebody who, you know, I dealt with consistent depression for over 10 years. I want to say probably 14 years. To the point where, you know, suicidal ideation or homicidal ideation was a consistent thought, you know, while I was married to the girls' dad. And so to face it takes its power away from it too.
You bet.
Because otherwise it's driving your life.
You got it.
And you don't realize it. You just, you know, you wake up pissed off. And you don't know why you're so pissed off. Well, it's still lingering from 4 years ago in this huge, massive grudge that I've been holding, when really it's just sadness, because instead of us fighting, I would have rather us had a hug. And here I am 4 years holding a grudge against this person when I just needed a hug, you know? And it took a lot. I mean, 2012 was the very first time I came to Saturday Night Live. And that's been 14 years now. It was March of 2012. And so I've been doing this for a long time, and it's taken this long. Well, I mean, I don't even know if you guys remember whenever I first started coming here 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years, 3 years. It's been a couple years now that I've been here consistently. And I was very depressed whenever I first started coming back. But I just, in these last 3 years, leaving the relationship that I was in and doing the inner childhood healing, and my children becoming adults, and just like bam, being faced with empty nesting, you know, and all of those emotions that I had suppressed all came to head. all at one time in this last year and a half. I say one time because this last year and a half has been a very rough year and a half, but it's been some of the best growth or fastest growth I want to say that I think I've probably ever had, because I've actually been alone too. Like, this is the first time I've been alone, without a relationship, without waking up every morning and in survival mode, taking my kids to school, just I am to myself most of the time right now. And so it's been a lot of growth. Yeah. Thank you for
Thank you.
recognizing it.
You're very welcome. Any comments or questions? All right. Well, thank you, Vanessa. Appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me.
Well, we're gonna continue to let you.
Yes.
Next, I was looking for next week's topic.
No, it's sorrow.
It's sorrow.
Yeah, I'm getting to it.
I thought I had a sheet here, but I lost it.
Maybe it's up there on pulpit.
Constructive sorrow.
Constructive sorrow. Yeah.
Constructive sorrow.
Okay. And who's teaching it?
I'm supposed to, but
I'm doing questions.
yeah, you're on questions again. I can't think of his name right now.
Brandon?
Brandon. If he's here, he'll do it.
Alright.
If not, I'll do it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks for you covering for Lori, and thank you, Vanessa, for sharing and being open and vulnerable. So, anything from anybody else before I close in prayer? Thank you, Lord, for tonight and for all that's going on in our lives, the healing that's taking place. We appreciate that, Father. That you're with us. You're there to help us, to help us to move into that place of relationship with you, in a better relationship with you. So, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you and give you His peace. And make healthy choices.